Welcome on into the Cleveland Browns Report. Coming up on today's show, we're going to talk about the latest revolving around the stadium for the Browns, the NFL rule changes that went down on Tuesday, the latest on a Brazil game. I do want to start really quickly right now, just off the bat, the Nick Chubb update. We put a whole video out on that earlier on the channel, so if you want a more in-depth recap on it, I invite you to go watch that after or before watching this video. But the overall takeaway from it is Andrew Berry seemed optimistic that he was ahead of schedule, and fingers crossed that his return will be closer to week one than, say, like middle of the season. Keep in mind he got a second surgery in November, so if you go 12 months from then, we're talking November of 2024. But Berry's just overall tone, it sounded like a guy that was getting good news and was happy to share that Chubb was making good progress on his rehab, and hopefully they can get him back closer to week one, but nothing definitive, although he did say, ask me again during the draft, and I might have a better answer for you. Now, let's get right into the stadium update side of things. So, Jimmy is at the NFL owners meeting, and he confirmed to the local media there that the Browns are close to acquiring 176 acres of land in Brook Park, right across from the airport. And this is not like brand new information. If you remember a few weeks ago, the Neo Trans blog, Northeast Ohio Transportation blog, kind of broke this story. And some people in the area, not going to say who, but you might already know, didn't want to run with it because they didn't think it was true. And, well, now it's basically true. So, yeah. Now, the stadium lease for the Browns expires in 2028 with the city. And the question really is, do they want to be in a dome in the suburbs or renovate their downtown stadium? Now, the renovation would cost about $1 billion. A dome would cost about double that. But we all know that construction prices quickly go up. I look at this as a chess match. We're seeing it unfold right now with the Chicago Bears. They're a few steps ahead than where the Cleveland Browns are right now in their new stadium hunt. But it happened with the Minnesota Vikings. It's happened with a bunch of teams where ownership doesn't want to spend all the money necessarily, right? And they want to get the city, the county, and the state to chip in some taxpayer dollars. Now, you've got examples like SoFi Stadium, where ownership paid for the entire thing by themselves. And that runs with some pros and cons. If you pay for the whole thing entire yourself, you get entire say. You can do whatever you want. You can get all the parking revenue, all the concession revenue. When you split the bill with the city is going to want to get some of that parking revenue and concession revenue and stuff like that. So ultimately, we have a chess match unfolding here where the Browns, the Jimmy Haslam group basically, is going to come out every so often and say, we want to be in Cleveland, but we really want a dome. And what they're basically saying is, we want a dome stadium, pony up, city of Cleveland, county, and state, get more money to help offset the costs, and we'll build it in downtown Cleveland. Otherwise, we'll leave the city. Ball's in your court. And this is going to go back and forth for a little while now. This is not going to be something that I think gets resolved or we get an answer to in the next month. I think it could drag out for maybe even a full year. I mean, we're not in the infancy stages of this, but it really comes down to, will the Browns get what they want from the city, which is a dome stadium, or are they going to have to go to the suburbs to do that? In a perfect world, the Browns and the fan base and the city, all three members of this party, get a dome stadium downtown, right? City of Cleveland keeps the Browns in Cleveland. That's good for business, right? That's good for taxpayer revenue and things like that. The Browns get a dome stadium, and the fans no longer have to freeze their asses off. So there are a lot of good pros to that, but it's not always a perfect world. And if the city of Cleveland is not willing to split what could be a $2 to $3 billion stadium tab, and the Browns have to leave the city to do it, I think the Browns are going to do that. If you're going to spend $1 billion and you don't even really love how you're spending it, you might as well spend $2 billion and get what you want. Like whether it's $1 billion, $1 million, or $100, if you're in for $100 and you don't even like the TV you're buying, Don't you want to spend $200 for the TV you really want? Or if you're going to a game you really want to go to, do you want to spend $100 for nosebleeds and barely see it? Or do you want to spend an extra bit more and actually see what you're paying to see? I think this is true on all levels. Now, of course, when you get into the billions, the conversations are a lot more intense. But I would prefer a dome stadium. And if that cannot happen in downtown Cleveland, we're going to the burbs. I just think what's best for the team is to play in a dome. We are seeing the Browns not have a ton of home field success in December in their history. And the turning point for me, by the way, as I used to be on the other side of the fence, was the Saints game 2 years ago. Like, home game, you get Deshaun Watson back from the suspension. It is do or die to go to the playoffs, and you let a team that practices indoors in New Orleans come up to Cleveland in December in negative 30 degrees and beat you at your own game. If you're not getting an advantage against Southern teams by playing outdoors in the winter, what are you accomplishing other than people freezing their asses off? Now, the one argument that I don't really give a ton of weight to is if you build a dome stadium, you can get Final Fours. You can host a Super Bowl. That's true. The Vikings built a dome stadium. They got a Final Four. They got a Super Bowl. Are they going back anytime soon? I don't think so. So you get it once, probably, maybe twice, but let's not act like once you build a dome, oh, you are in the mix right now for every single Final Four. That shouldn't be a driving force. You get one Final Four, probably one Super Bowl, and I don't think the NFL has aspirations to go back to Minneapolis for another Super Bowl, or the NCAA wants to run March Madness through Minnesota again. Now, what would it look like? We do have this picture. This comes from the Neo Trans blog, and we can actually kind of enlarge this a little bit for you. But you can see in relation to the airport, and you've got highways, you've got an Amtrak station. So from a transportation perspective, you're off to a good-ish start here. Like if you're trying to compare this to, say, the Chicago Bears, because I think that's the most relevant comparison to make, they're looking at property in a suburb as well called Arlington Heights. It's a little bit further away from Soldier Field than Brook Park is from Cleveland Browns Stadium, and there's not a ton of highways running right by the stadium. So that would be a massive undertaking. The Browns are already off to a decent start here, given the infrastructure already surrounding this big 176-acre plot of land they acquired that used to be, I believe, 2 Ford factories, but someone older can correct me if I got that wrong. Now, if you are a fan of keeping the team in the city, listen, I get it, and personally, in a perfect world, I want every team to play in downtown because that just creates an awesome scene and vibe, whether you're a visiting fan or you're a home fan. But there are a lot of teams that play outside of what you would consider the downtown area, right? Arrowhead Stadium is not in the city of Kansas. Like, it's in Kansas City proper, but it's not near downtown at all. You can't walk to Arrowhead from downtown Kansas City like you could-ish for Cleveland Browns Stadium. AT&T Stadium, the Dallas Cowboys play in Arlington. The Washington Commanders, they don't play in Washington, D.C. They play in Landover, Maryland. Gillette Stadium, they're not really trying to act like they play in Boston, but that's not in Boston, right? We know that's in Foxborough. Miami Dolphins don't play in Miami. They play in Miami Gardens, which is about 30 to 45-ish minutes, depending on traffic, north of Miami. The Buffalo Bills don't play in Buffalo. They play in Orchard Park, about 15, 20 minutes away. The San Francisco 49ers play in Santa Clara. The New York Giants and Jets play in New Jersey. The Arizona Cardinals, they're the whole state of Arizona, but they don't play in Phoenix. They play in Glendale. So not truly the mecca of the city or the biggest city of Arizona. So you've got plenty of examples, and right there alone, we're talking 10-ish teams that don't play downtown. So almost a third of the league is doing something that the Browns will be approaching to do. So where do you want the Browns to play? Want to be downtown, dome or not? Or, hey, let's go to the suburbs so you can build the stadium you want to build, because clearly that's not happening in downtown Cleveland. For me, I want a dome stadium. If that can happen in downtown, that's a perfect world. If it can't, I'm okay with going to the suburbs. All right, I want to get on to some other topics on today's show. Rule changes. So we're going to kind of run through all the rule changes here, starting with the hip drop tackle, which has been made illegal. I'll keep this short and sweet. This will be a disaster. It's going to be incredibly difficult for officials to officiate. We are talking split-second decisions here. It's a 15-yard penalty and an automatic first down. There will be fines up the wazoo for players. I don't see a way this works whatsoever. I understand it's got a good intent, and maybe if this was implemented, Minkah Fitzpatrick doesn't try and tackle Nick Chubb the same way, although there is going to be a long learning curve for players learning how to tackle. I mean, just think about if you're a 190-pound DB, you're in a zone defense, you're covering the flat, and a 220-pound running back or a 235-pound tight end slips out into the flat and the quarterback just drops it off. How is the 190-pound DB supposed to really bring that guy down without doing some level of a hip drop tackle, which is basically just using your weight and leverage against the player? I don't want to see guys break ankles and get knees torn and things like that, but this just seems like it's going to maybe lead to unintended consequences, like that DB now just diving for the knees because that's the only way you can take him down, and that leads to a different kind of injury. All right, before we get on to the rest of the NFL rule changes, today's show is sponsored by Game Time. Spring is here, which means we have baseball to watch, along with playoff basketball, March Madness, and hockey, and you shouldn't have to miss any of the action because of ticket prices. With Game Time, you can get killer last-minute deals and all-in prices for all the big events. Now, what I love that Game Time does is it gives you a view from your seat before you purchase your tickets, so there's no surprises when you show up. Plus, we all know that hidden fees suck, but Game Time gives you an all-in price option, so you really know how much tickets are going to cost. It's the best place to find last-minute seats. Download the Game Time app, create an account, and use code CHATSPORTS for $20 off your first purchase. Terms apply, but again, create an account and redeem code CHAT, C-H-A-T, SPORTS for $20 off. Download Game Time today. Last minute tickets, lowest price guaranteed. Because I love you guys, I put all that information in the comments and description of today's video because I'm sure a lot of you already forgot that. Second big rule change, the kickoff is going to be changed. And I'm sure you've all already heard about this, but let me kind of catch you up to speed on what this exactly means, because we're already seeing a trickle-down effect of this because the Pittsburgh Steelers went out and signed Cordell Patterson to take care of kick return duties. So let's throw this graphic or this picture on screen so you guys can get a good representation of what it will look like now. So moving forward, if you have no idea how it works, you've got your kicker who will still be at the 35-yard line. Everyone else on the kickoff team, so the other 10 players, will line up stationary at the 40-yard line. The receiving team can have 2 players, the return men, who stand in the landing zone. That's from the goal line to the 20. The other 9 players must be up in the setup zone. That's between the 30 and the 35. 7 of those 9 guys in the setup zone have to have a foot on the 35-yard line. No one can move until the ball hits the ground or it touches one of the return men. So it reduces the high-speed collisions, and it's going to help teams get better field position because it incentivizes kick returns more. How does it do that? Let's look at the new touchback rules. This is very important. If a kick fails to reach the 20-yard line or it goes out of bounds, the receiving team would get the ball at the 40-yard line like they do now, or where the ball went out of bounds, whatever is more advantageous. But it's likely going to be the 40-yard line. Hard to kick it out of bounds at the 50. It would go to the 30-yard line if the kicker kicks the ball into the end zone and out the back on the fly. So what the NFL is trying to do here is incentivize the return game by telling kickers, if you kick it out of the back of the end zone, the touchback goes to the 30 compared to how it used to be, the 25. So now kickers are going to try and kick it just short of out of the back of the end zone, which will lead to more kick returns, and it won't be out to the 30 every time. It will go to the 20-yard line if the ball rolls into the end zone. So if it lands at the 2 and takes a quick hop into the end zone and the team kneels it down at that spot, it will go out to the 20. So from a kicking standpoint, you are aiming for that like 0 to 3-yard line to try and get it to bounce into the end zone where it'll be out to the 20, as opposed to just showing off your strong leg, kicking it out the back of the end zone, and it goes out to the 30. So all this is going to bring to a lot more kick returns, which have been historically down. Now, it's also worth noting, rest in peace to surprise onside kicks. Those no longer exist under this rule. You have to declare an onside kick ahead of time with the officials and the other team, and then it goes back to how onside kicks where you normally line up towards the kickoff line. So it's a big win for special teams. The Josh Cribbs era was dying, and I'm a fan of this, and I'll explain why in a second, but I do want to get your overall thoughts on it. Do you like the kickoff change? Do you like it? Do you dislike it? Change is always hard, but I think this is a change for the better. Third rule change. Very quickly, third challenge. Before, if you went 1 for 2 on your first 2 challenges, you didn't get a third challenge. You had to go 2 for 2 to get that third challenge. Now, if you just go 1 for 2, you still get a third. Other one, I don't get this one. It's the double foul. I asked people at my office. I couldn't get a clear explanation. Basically, what I took away from it is if there's a penalty on offense and defense during the course of a change of possession, the ball will stick with the team that last had possession. And I don't really understand what's different about this from how it used to be. So someone that's a lot smarter, please explain this last rule change to me. Everyone's been so focused on the top 2 that this one has kind of gotten forgotten and has slipped through the cracks. So I don't get the double foul change. Other important news here. Tom Pelissero tweeted out, "This is big. NFL Competition Committee Chairman Rich McKay told me the replay assistant will now be permitted to correct certain types of incorrect calls for roughing the passer and intentional grounding. Must be purely objective. Quarterback wasn't hit in the head, was out of the pocket, etc." I think this is an excellent change, right? There are just moments where the officials, they are human, they get it wrong, right? They thought a guy hit a quarterback in the head, and he didn't, and the quarterback sold it a little bit, playing soccer instead of football, and a bogus roughing the passer is called. Now there is at least a system in place where completely false calls can get wiped away. Also, the tush push, it is staying. So the Browns, who we'll talk about in a moment, may play the Eagles in week 1 in Brazil, will have to prepare their defensive line for the tush push. So the Eagles are going to keep the bread and butter of their offense, although no Jason Kelsey. So will it work the same? Another thing, 2 Christmas Day games. Christmas is on a Wednesday this year. There will be a doubleheader. The NFL is just dropping their nuts on the NBA's forehead right now, saying, you had Christmas, we have Christmas now. Pick a different holiday. I feel bad for the NBA, but the NFL takes what it wants. Overall, I'm a fan of the rule changes. I love kick returns. That part of the game was becoming non-existent, right? If you wanted to go to the bathroom after a touchdown, you could go. You know that you'd have the TV timeout and the kick return in your favor because that was going to be a touchback anyway. So you had an extra 60 to 90 seconds built in. I'm a fan of the NFL trying to bring back kick returns. It's only going to be a one-year thing, although I'm sure if it goes well, they will definitely extend it or tweak it. But for now, it is technically just a one-year addition, but I'm confident that some form or variety of this will stick around beyond that. I know I've kept you guys for a long time today, so one last thing here. Are the Browns going to Brazil? The rumor is it's between the Browns and the Packers to face the Eagles. Even the Packers GM said this to the media today. It's down to Cleveland and us being Green Bay. So coin flip between these two. The game will be exclusively streamed on Peacock. We'll have a watch party, though, if the Browns are playing in it. And the decision is expected as soon as maybe Thursday night or into Friday. I'm game either way. We've kind of talked about this subject a lot on the channel before, or just Browns fans in general. There's pros and cons to it, right? I think the Browns will likely be on the road week 2 because there's a concert at Cleveland Browns Stadium. Rod Stewart, right, on Friday or Saturday night before NFL week 2. So unless they play at home Monday night week 2, We're talking back-to-back road games, so that's kind of a downer. But if you do play in Brazil on Friday, you kind of have a little bit of a bye before you go into week 2. So an advantage over whoever you're playing the next week who would have just played on Sunday. So an extra day or so of rest. Overall, you can go back and forth. There's pros, there's cons. Let's wait and see what happens. But I'm game either way. I'm not going to be devastated, whatever the decision is. Now, do you want to play in Brazil? Let's wrap up with this question right here. Let me know down in the comment section. I'm sorry for robbing everyone of what would have been the length of watching an Office episode. But we had a lot to get to today. And I didn't want to skip anything, Trace.
No, I mean, this is why you subscribe. Because we bring you guys really fun and entertaining content. And we condense it in less than 30 minutes.
Yeah.
ESPN, those shows last 2 hours.
Let's keep it short and sweet right now. What do you want to go
So I'm liking the 9 of hearts.
9 of hearts? Give me the Jack of spades. Seven of diamonds.
Oh.
7 of diamonds. Okay, that will do it for us on today's show. Thank you guys so much for tuning in. We're going to sign off, and we will see you all later here on the Cleveland Browns Report.